Once upon a time, in an era full of mysterious stories, there's a very interesting tale about a man named Cain and his wife. This story is found in the Bible book of Genesis, and it starts with the first family in the world, Adam, Eve, and their sons Cain and Abel. Cain, the eldest son, worked the land, planting and harvesting, while his brother Abel took care of sheep. One day, the two brothers offered gifts to God, but God favored Abel's gift more. Cain became very jealous and angry and did something terrible. He killed his brother Abel. After this, God sent Cain away to a place called the land of Nod, which was far away. And here comes a great mystery. Cain found a wife in this place. But who was she? Where did she come from, if the only woman we knew until then was Eve? This question has intrigued many people for years. Some tried to find answers by carefully reading the Bible, while others thought this mystery was just a part of the story. What we know is that the story of Cain and his wife is very mysterious and makes people think a lot about it. After a very sad event where Cain, a farmer, became jealous and angry and ended up doing something terrible, he hurt his brother Abel, a shepherd, in a way that Abel did not survive. This was very bad and changed everything in the beautiful place where they lived, called Eden. Suddenly, God spoke to Cain and asked, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain tried to pretend he didn't know, but God already knew the truth. God knew Cain had done something very bad and needed to be punished. But instead of harming Cain, God decided that Cain should leave Eden and live alone, wandering without a fixed place to stay. God also gave Cain a special mark to protect him. So, Cain had to leave Eden and went to a place called the land of Nod, which was very far away. There, Cain had to start a new life, carrying the sadness for what he had done and also the punishment God had given him. It was a journey not only of traveling to different places but also of deep reflection about himself and his actions. Cain, who had been punished and sent away, walked through an unknown place, which was far and empty, quite different from Eden, where he lived before. Now, he felt very sad and alone, and a great mystery was about to unfold in his life. How did Cain, who was alone and had been separated from others, manage to find someone to be with in a place where there were hardly any people? The Bible tells many things about how people began, but it says nothing about where Cain's wife came from. We only know that Adam and Eve were the first and had children. Thus, the story of Cain's wife is like a big secret. She appears suddenly in the land of Nod, and nobody really knows who she is. Was she a daughter of Adam and Eve too, but not mentioned before? Or is there another explanation? This secret about Cain's wife makes people think a lot. She is an important character, but nobody knows her name or her story. She is one of the great mysteries of the Bible. In the ancient story of the Bible, a great mystery is where Cain's wife came from. People have thought of two main ideas to try to understand this. The first idea is that God might have created more people besides Adam and Eve and placed them in different parts of the world. So, when Cain was wandering alone in the land of Nod, he might have come across one of these places and there met a woman who became his wife. This idea is interesting, but it doesn't align much with what the Bible says, as it states that all humans came from Adam and Eve. The second idea, more in line with what the Bible suggests, is that Cain married someone from his own family, perhaps a sister or niece. This means that Adam and Eve had more children besides Cain, Abel, and Seth, even though the Bible doesn't talk much about them. Since there were few people in the world at that time, marrying someone from the family was normal and necessary for families to grow. These two ideas show how the stories of the Bible make people think and discuss. The first idea brings the possibility of a world with more creations, while the second follows what the Bible usually says about families. Both show that biblical stories are full of mysteries and things to learn. In the beginning of everything, when people started to exist, the Bible tells the story of Adam and Eve. They were the first man and woman, and from them came all other people in the world. Their story is very important in the Bible. Adam and Eve lived in a beautiful place called the Garden of Eden, where everything was perfect. But after they disobeyed an important rule, they had to leave and live in a more challenging place. That's where they started forming the great family of all of us. They had children, and their children had more children, and so on. Cain and Abel were their first children mentioned in the Bible. After sad events with Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve had another son named Seth, and the family continued to grow. This story shows that all people are connected because everyone came from the same family at the beginning. So, when the Bible says that Cain found a wife, she probably also came from this same large family. The story of Adam and Eve is like the root of a big tree that tells how we are all connected from the start. The most sensible answer is that Cain married someone from his own family. This is because, in the beginning, there were only Adam and Eve, and they were the first to have children. Then, their children and their children's children were the only people available for marriage. Thinking this way, Cain might have married a sister, a niece, or even a great-granddaughter. The Bible mentions Cain, Abel, and then Seth, but also implies that Adam and Eve had many other children. Over time, the family grew. In that time, marrying someone from the family was normal and necessary for people to continue existing. Therefore, Cain's wife, even though we don't know her name or many details about her, was probably related to him. This story shows us how the first human families were and how our rules and customs have changed over time. Cain had to start a new and challenging part of his life. Arriving in the land of Nod, which was far from everything and everyone. There, he was alone, but God gave him a special mark that protected him. Even feeling very sad and alone, Cain began to build a new life. Something important happened: he got married. The woman who became his wife was like a beacon of light in his life, filled with sadness. Together, they had a son named Enoch, which was like starting all over again, even in a difficult situation. Cain also built a city and named it after his son, Enoch. Doing this showed that he wanted to create a safe place and leave something good for the future, even while always remembering what he had done. The story of Cain after being expelled is about how he tried to fix things and move forward, despite many difficulties. It teaches us that even when we make big mistakes, we can still try to do good things and take care of the people we love. Cain shows that people can always try to improve and continue living, even when everything seems very difficult. The Bible story is full of mysteries and things to think about. One of these mysteries is about Cain's wife. The Bible doesn't give many details about who she was or where she came from. This leads people to think of many different ideas to try to understand better. These mysteries in the Bible are normal, as it is a very old book and was written in a way that sometimes leaves us with questions. This makes people read the Bible and try to understand the stories in different ways. Thinking about Cain's wife helps us think about important things, like where we come from and who we are. Even though we don't know all the answers, these questions are important and help us learn more about the Bible and life. The Book of Jubilees is an ancient text that tells stories similar to those in the Bible, but in a slightly different way. It talks more about Cain's story and how he found his wife. In this book, the story is that Cain married his own sister. This book is also known as Genesis, because it provides more details about the events in the book of the Bible. For example, it talks more about Adam and Eve and all the sons and daughters they had, not just Cain, Abel, and Seth. According to the book of Jubilees, each son of Adam and Eve had a twin sister, and they ended up marrying these sisters. This idea may seem strange to us today, but at that time, it was normal and necessary for families to grow. So, the book of Jubilees provides a clear answer about Cain's wife, saying that she was his sister. This helps to better understand this part of the story that the Bible doesn't explain much. This book shows that there are many different ways to tell these ancient stories, and each one can have different details. In biblical times, marrying someone from one's own family was normal. This happened because in the beginning, there weren't many people in the world. So, people married brothers, cousins, or nephews to ensure that families continued. For example, in the story of Adam and Eve, who were the first, their children had to marry among themselves. Even the story of Cain mentions that he might have married a sister. Later, when the great flood occurred and only Noah, his wife, their sons, and their sons' wives survived, the people who came after also married within the family. This was necessary for the human population to grow again. But, over time, as more and more people were born and families grew larger, it was no longer necessary to marry relatives. Later, the laws of the Bible, called the Mosaic Laws, even stated that it was no longer right to marry people from the same family. This custom of marrying someone from the family in biblical times shows how things have changed. In the beginning, it was necessary for families to continue, but later the rules changed as more people appeared and societies grew. Well, we have come to the end. I hope this content has increased your knowledge of the Bible. I hope you enjoyed learning about this. If you liked it, give a thumbs up to the video and share it with your friends. You can tell us what you think by leaving a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you and see you next time.